Climate goals are forcing, well, pretty massive transitions in power systems, almost science fiction level stuff. But maybe the biggest question facing us isn't just can we get to 100% renewable energy? It's how do regions actually pull that off, keep the lights on, keep things stable, and maybe most importantly for you, keep costs from spiraling. So today we're doing a deep dive into a slightly older source, but one that's still super relevant. It's from 2018, and it tackled exactly this problem for a really interesting area, the Baltic Sea region. We're looking at the study called the Baltic Sea Region, Storage, Grid Exchange, and Flexible Electricity Generation for the Transition to a 100% Renewable Energy System.
Yeah, and it's good to set the stage for this one because it gets technical pretty fast. This 2018 paper, it simulated the whole power system transition for the Baltic Sea region. That's Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, plus the Baltics, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, all grouped together. They modeled the shift from 2015 way out to 2050, and they used a pretty sophisticated tool, hourly resolved least cost optimization. It's called the LUT Energy System Transition Model.
Okay, so least cost optimization means the computer basically crunched the numbers to find the absolute cheapest way to get to 100% renewables.
Exactly. It was given all the assumptions about technology costs, the demand across the whole region, hour by hour, and just calculated the lowest cost path to meet all that demand with renewables while making sure the system stayed stable every single hour.
Got it. So our mission today is to unpack what that model actually found. We're going to zero in on, let's say, three things. The tech mix needed, what it means for your wallet, the cost, and, this is key, how working together regionally totally changes the game. So let's dig in. What's the big headline finding?
Well, the core finding is pretty groundbreaking, especially for 2018 when, let's face it, renewable costs were quite a bit higher than now. The model showed that a 100% renewable power sector isn't just possible for the Baltic Sea region, but based on their inputs, it was actually the least cost way forward.
Whoa, hang on. That's huge, because the usual thinking, especially back then, was that going all in on renewables, well, it costs more, right? You got regulatory hurdles, premium prices.
It definitely pushes back against that idea. The study lays out a clear economic case. So back in 2015, the average levelized cost of electricity, the LCOE, which is basically the total lifetime cost, was around 60 euros per megawatt hour. The model shows that cost actually falling over the 35 years, not going up.
That is fascinating. Okay, so what did the final bill look like in 2050?
Well, it really depends on how much everyone cooperates. There were two main scenarios. The regions one, that's where each country or area tries to do it mostly on their own. Even then, the cost drops quite a bit, down to 48 euros per megawatt hour by 2050.
Okay, still cheaper than 2015.
Right. But then there's the area scenario. That's where they're all interconnected, optimized, like one big system. And there, the LCOE drops even further, down to 45 euros.
So cooperation saves money. Makes sense.
Yeah, the cost reduction is sort of built into the transition itself, but working together shaves off another, 7% or so? It really adds up.
But to get those savings, things have to change really fast. The model demanded a quick phase out of the old stuff, right? Coal, for instance.
Oh, absolutely. Coal-fired plants basically vanish by 2035 in the model, partly just due to age. But the big one, maybe, is nuclear. The model optimized it completely out of the system by 2030.
By 2030, that's incredibly quick for nuclear.
It is. This isn't some slow, gentle transition. It's a radical overhaul, really, within about 2 decades. And what you end up with in 2050 in that interconnected area scenario is mostly 3 renewables. Hydropower is still the biggest chunk, about 35%. Then you've got wind close behind at 30%, and solar PV catching up fast at 22%.
I think I saw in the paper that wind actually gets the biggest boost early on, like up to 2025.
That's right, yeah. Wind ramps up quickly. First, it was more established, good resources available, but then solar PV really takes off after that, filling in the summer and daytime gaps. The rest, about 13%, comes from things like bioenergy and a bit of geothermal.
Okay, right. So that brings us straight to the elephant in the room. Stability. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. If you've got, over half your power coming from wind and solar, which aren't always on, how do you keep the grid stable? What did the study say about flexibility?
Good question. The study pointed to 4 main things working together to provide that flexibility. First, you've got bioenergy, storable bioenergy. Second, the huge amount of hydropower already there in the region, especially Norway and Sweden.
Okay, hydro is a big one.
Massive. Third is transmitting power between regions. We'll get back to that. And fourth is building up more dedicated storage technologies.
So the bioenergy and hydro, they act like the dispatchable muscle, the stuff you can turn on when the wind dies down or the sun sets.
Exactly that. They're crucial for balancing the system, especially over seasons, providing power in winter when solar is low, backing up those variable sources.
To handle those swings, though, the model must have needed a lot of new storage capacity, right? Can we walk through what kind of storage and how much it needed by 2050? That seems critical.
It absolutely is. The study breaks it down into three main types, working on different timescales. First is pumped hydro storage, PHS. Since the region already has a lot of hydro, the PHS capacity actually stays pretty constant in the model, around 19 gigawatt hours throughout the whole period.
Okay, so that's a stable baseline for short-term balancing.
Right. Second, you've got system batteries. These are for the shorter term stuff, the daily cycles charging up maybe from solar during the day, discharging in the evening peak. They start appearing from 2025 and grow quite a bit, up to maybe 50 gigawatt hours in that interconnected area scenario by 2050.
50 GWH done. Okay. And then the big one for the seasonal shift, dealing with like dark, cold winters versus sunny summers. That's the gas storage, and the numbers look huge there.
Yeah, they are. For that long-term seasonal storage, the model calls for massive capacity, almost 17,000 gigawatt hours of gas storage, GW gas, in the area scenario by 2050. That's a huge jump, needed to store energy for weeks or even months. And crucially, this isn't fossil gas. The model assumes a shift to renewable gas biogas, biomethane made domestically, and maybe some synthetic natural gas, SNG, made using surplus renewable electricity.
Okay, hold on. That brings up something I found a bit confusing in the paper. It needs this enormous gas storage, like 17,000 kWh. But the actual output needed from power to gas plants, the things that make SNG from electricity, was tiny. Like only 2 kWh total. Why build all that storage if you're not making much fuel with electricity?
Ugh, that's a really key point, and maybe a bit counterintuitive. You need the massive physical volume of storage to handle that seasonal energy shift, right? To sock away energy for winter. But the Baltic Sea region has these other flexible tools, particularly bioenergy plants and existing hydro. These resources can already produce renewable gas like biogas or biomethane, or provide dispatchable power directly. So the system doesn't need to rely heavily on expensive power-to-gas facilities to create the fuel for storage.
Ah, okay. So the bioenergy and hydro are kind of feeding the storage system or providing the backup directly, reducing the need to spend electricity making synthetic gas.
Precisely. The flexibility is already sort of baked into the existing hydro and the planned bioenergy. It means you need the storage tank, so to speak, but not necessarily a huge PDG factory running all the time to fill it. It makes the whole seasonal balancing act much more efficient.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
And if you look at the daily patterns, the model showed how things operate hour by hour. It confirms this. The hydro dams and the gas storage, they discharge pretty steadily through the winter months, providing that long-term backup. Whereas the batteries and the pumped hydro, they're doing the quick daily stuff, charging in the afternoon, often from solar, then discharging fast in the evening peak.
And doesn't the study mention a kind of subtle benefit of the batteries, too? Something about the biomass plants.
It did, yeah. Having those system batteries smooths out the short-term bumps. It means the biomass plants don't have to constantly ramp up and down to follow every little fluctuation. They can run more steadily, more efficiently, acting as that solid backbone.
Interesting. And it wasn't just about big utility scale stuff either. I noticed prosumer batteries, ones in homes or businesses, played a noticeable role too.
Absolutely. They reach about 178 GWH by 2050 in the model. It shows that people, communities, businesses investing in their own solar and batteries are actually an important part of making the whole system work. Decentralized helps.
Okay, let's pivot now to maybe the most important comparison in the research, the bit that explained those cost savings. The area versus regions scenarios. The big question was, does that strong regional cooperation really pay off compared to going it alone?
And the answer from the model was a very clear yes. That €3 difference per megawatt hour we talked about, that's basically the financial reward for interconnecting and optimizing together. And it wasn't just cost. Better interconnection also led to much, much faster decarbonization in the model.
Faster? How much faster?
Well, in that interconnected area scenario, the power sector is basically decarbonized by 2035, a whole decade earlier than the regions scenario, which didn't get there until about 2045.
Wow, a full decade. That's a massive difference. So what's the basic reason why interconnection helps so much?
It's really about smoothing things out over geography. Think about it. If it's cloudy and calm in Finland, it might be sunny and windy off the coast of Denmark, right? So if you can share that power across a wide area like the Baltic Sea region, you average out the ups and downs of wind and solar. You don't need as much total generation capacity built everywhere. You need less storage overall, and you waste less power through curtailment.
So instead of every single country building enough backup for its own worst-case scenario, you share the load.
Exactly. And you see that reflected in the storage requirements. The need for some of those, let's say, more complex or expensive seasonal storage types, like thermal energy storage or compressed air energy storage, was much lower in the interconnected case. The model found that the existing big hydro dams, especially in Norway and Sweden, could handle a lot of that seasonal balancing much more cost-effectively when the system was linked up.
That sounds like a strong case for building those big interconnector lines. But isn't that really expensive and politically difficult sometimes? Did the model factor in the cost of new transmission?
It did, yeah. And the finding was that those transmission costs, while significant, were, quote, more than offset by the savings you get from needing less generation, less storage, and having less wasted energy. The overall system efficiency gain paid for the grid upgrades, basically.
Okay, that's a critical point.
And to make this work, the model showed that maybe up to 15% of all the electricity generated, around 587 terawatt hours, would need to be traded between the regions. But here's the kicker. The researchers pointed out that level of trading, 15%, was actually pretty similar to the levels already happening in many of those Baltic Sea countries back in 2018.
So the policy takeaway is pretty clear then. The amount of interconnection needed for this optimal, cheapest, fastest path wasn't some crazy, unachievable leap. It was more like building on what was already happening.
Exactly. It suggests that regional cooperation isn't some insurmountable hurdle, but actually the key to making the transition smoother, faster, and cheaper, stronger together, essentially.
Okay, so let's try and sum up the key nuggets from this 2018 study we've dived into. First, a 100% renewable power system in the Baltic Sea region. Not just possible by 2050, but actually the lowest cost option, according to this model. Second, making it work relies on a smart mix of storage, big seasonal gas storage, working alongside faster daily batteries. And third, crucially, strong regional interconnection makes the whole thing cheaper and gets you there a decade faster.
And tying it back to the bigger picture, if the Baltic Sea region can achieve this kind of rapid transition, getting close to zero carbon by 2035, in that interconnected model that's potentially leading the way for the whole EU, it showcases solutions. Of course, it needs the right policies, the planning, the investment at both national and regional levels to actually build the infrastructure and set up the markets to make it happen efficiently.
Which leaves us with maybe one final thought to chew on, building on what the study found about prosumers. Given how important those home and business batteries were, even in this 2018 model, imagine rerunning it today. How much faster, how much cheaper might that transition look if you factored in the massive potential storage sitting in all the electric cars we expect to see soon, connected via vehicle to grid?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question for future modeling. Just for reference, again, for everyone listening, our deep dive today was based on that 2018 study, the Baltic Sea region. Storage, grid exchange, and flexible electricity generation for the transition to a 100% renewable energy system.
And that wraps up our deep dive. Thanks for joining us.